According to some, you may wonder where I've been for the past 3 years or so. You know, like I've been like homebound my whole high school year, and you know, it took a lot of guts to make this video. And like some people have the wrong ideas why I'm not at school, but I'm going to tell y'all the real reason why I'm not at school. So back in 2010, like I started to grow like this small knot on my leg, and I got really worried about it. So my parents took me to the doctor, and they said, okay, we're gonna put you on some antibiotics, and if it's not well within a week, that we will operate. And I took the antibiotics for about a week, and nothing happened. It just kept growing and growing and growing. And we did x-rays, we did all sorts of things. And then when we went back to my doctor, he seen it wasn't working, so he scheduled that we could get like surgery done at St. Mary's Hospital. And then we got that done. We went there, like the surgery was scheduled like a week later, and I was in high school at the time, but I only went to school for like a week or so. Then I didn't get my surgery done. And when I went in there, I was so scared, you know, but I just put my music, always helps me calm down. And so I put in my music, listen to some Justin Bieber, some Usher, like they're my top favorite singers. And then it was time for the operation, and I signed the papers, went in, fell asleep under the anesthesia, and I thought everything was going to be fine. I was like, oh, okay, I can get back in school within a week. But then, you know, I went back into my room where my parents were, and, you know, it's like worst news that no kid would want to hear. And my dad just came right out and said, oh, the doctor, he took your knot out, and he looked under the microscope, and he think it's cancer. And, you know, I just went blank at the moment. And then I just started to cry and cry and cry. And my parents, my mom and dad, they just knelt over my bed and said, you'll be fine. We want to get this taken care of. We want to find out what's wrong. And recovering from that surgery was really hard. You know, I had like 17 staples in my leg, and the recovery process was the worst. And learning how to walk again was the worst. I couldn't like do anything on my own. Like people had to do stuff for me. Like I had to be in a wheelchair. And so like probably like a month later, I had to go to Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. And we went on the 14th floor, and I read the sign. It was like hematology and oncology. I was like, why am I on this? This is like cancer. Why am I on this floor? And then I went and seen the doctors. We had a conference. He was like, it is a rare type of cancer, and we need to get more MRIs and CAT scans and everything done so we can see if there's any more tumor left in the leg. And if I can tell y'all, like the MRIs are like so horrible. Like me, I'm claustrophobic because I don't like to be shut in. And it was like so horrible. Like sitting there still for the whole hour was the most painish and boringest thing ever. Then I get like a bone scan. It was like 65-minute test, and you have to sit still, and everything just gets numb, and you can't move, because if you move, you have to start over all over again. And we got all those done because I had to stay in Houston overnight. And I went back to them, and it was like, okay, the doctor, he did not do a good job on your leg, and he just completely like cut me open, took it out, didn't clean it out, and then he was like, we're going to re-operate. And I was like so scared, you know. I was like, why re-operate? Why re-operate? I thought it was done the first time. He was like, you have a rare type of cancer called neurofibroma type 1. And it's a rare cancer where like a mole supposed to grow outside of your skin, but instead of it going inside of my skin, it will form a tumor. Okay. Then 2 weeks later, I had to get another surgery done. And this surgery took like 9 hours, guys. It was the worst, horriblest surgery ever. I had to see plastic surgeons because they was afraid that when they had to cut all the way down to the bone, that it wouldn't close up by itself, or the stitches and stuff wouldn't close it back up. It was a 12-hour surgery. I had to get plastic surgery done, then to cover up the wound. And they cut off like 12 inches of my skin off my thigh. That was like so hurtful. And when I woke up, my parents was like, okay, they're pretty sure they got everything out, but there was a small piece of tumor they could not get out behind your ankle, because if they remove it, they was afraid that it would paralyze you and you wouldn't be able to walk again. I was like, okay. And I looked at my leg, you guys, and it was like so swollen, and the skin they just removed was like half of my skin off my thigh. It was like so disgusting. I was in the hospital within like a week, and the recovery process in the hospital was hard because I could not get out of bed. I couldn't go to the bathroom because they had, like, when you're in shriek bed, where they put a catheter in you, and like that hurts so bad. Okay, so recovering in the hospital, I just thought to myself, like, oh my gosh, why me? Like, I'm healthy. Like, how can something so healthy happen to me, And, I just sat there in my room and I just thought so long, like, what would someone who'd been through this do? And, I would just talk to God sometimes, asking him, why did you choose me out of all my brothers and sisters? Why me? It was like really hard because I just wanted to get back in school, enjoy my high school year, because I couldn't keep going through all the recovery processes. My dad came pick us up from the hospital a week later, and they had nurses come to the house to change my bandages on my wound. And that was like so hard. Like, my surgery wound would not heal up at all. And when I went back to the doctors to get more MRIs done, more and more MRIs, over and over, every 2 weeks. Every week we was in Houston, every week. And it did not heal up at all. And then the tumor came back again. I was a complete mess, you guys, I always wonder why some stuff happens to some people, But I just look at those kids at the hospital, and, there's some with brain tumors, everything, and it's like so hurtful. It's like, I just have a tumor on my leg, and these kids are going through so much more. Like, I didn't have to go through chemotherapy or radiation. I didn't do none of that because I chose an option where no kid would choose. I was like, I had enough. I couldn't go through this pain anymore. I couldn't do anything. I chose to get an amputation because if I had the amputation, that the tumors would stop, and that was the biggest decision of my life. It hurt my mom and my dad that I had to get my leg removed, but it was a choice I had to make on behalf of myself and on behalf of my life, because at this point it was between life or death situation, because I had gangrene in my leg, and it was the infection, because my doctor's like, okay, the infection can kill you faster than this tumor, and if you do not get this tumor removed, then it can spread and get into your lungs. And I was like, I just sat down that night, and that night before I made the decision, I couldn't sleep at all, and I just asked God. I was like, God, give me the courage and give me the strength to accept this, that it's not a choice, And then I just got on my knees and I just prayed. I was like, can you please come to me, God? Tell me the decision that what I had to make on behalf of myself, And I was like, God, we know that you can't put nothing on our shoulders that we can't bear. And I just sat there and cried all night long. And when I went to sleep finally, then I felt like God came to me and he told me that you will be cured. Just get this done. You'll be cured. And I got back up and I told my parents that morning, I'm going through with the surgery, even though it hurt them so bad. It hurt like my mom and my dad the most because they didn't want to see me go through this. My dad was like, if I could take my leg off my body and give it to you, I would. He's like, I lived my life already. It's like, I don't want to see my child go through this. I don't want to see you hurting and stuff, you know. You know how parents always be. And then we sat down and talked with all my family and my sisters and them. And we told them that I have to lose my leg in order to save my life. And it was like, really. And for me, it was tearing me up inside because I always try to put on a strong face, you know. I kept my head up. I didn't never put my head down because I have to be strong for myself and I have to be strong for my family. So, you know, I had a meeting the next day with my doctor, and I went and told him, I was like, okay, I'm going through with the surgery. He was like, okay, we have to get this done as soon as possible. So it's like the next week or so that we got it done. And my sisters and my family, everyone, they just took off work that day for me to get my surgery done. You know, the night before, I was in my room, I was pacing back and forth, wondering how my life would be. I'm losing my leg, you know, like, how can I get through life? Will my friends accept me for me? Will my classmates accept me for me? Will they judge me because of this, you know? And, you know, I always wondered that, but who cares, because nobody can laugh at you for losing your leg, you know? You still can do what you want to do no matter what. And the next morning we woke up, we had to drive to Houston. You know, I was just pacing, thinking. My mind was just roaming through everything. As usual, I put my music in my ears. And I put on the song Born to Be Somebody by Justin Bieber, of course. That song is like so good and it gets me through everything. And then we went in the operation area. I had to wait like about a couple of hours for me to get my operation done. And then it was time for me to get my operation done. And you know, my whole family was there. That made me a stronger person. Okay, I went in the surgery room. They laid me down. They told me, you will be fine. You will be okay. And they said, my doctor told me, you'll be fine. You'll be okay. Nothing will ever go wrong. And okay, they put me to sleep. You know, it was like from 2:30 to about 10 o'clock that night is when I got out of surgery. And I woke up, and you know, I just told my dad, can you go get my sister for me? You know, I was trying to fight back the tears because I didn't want to cry in front of him. So he went and got my sister, and you know, the tears just started welling out of my eyes. I was like, my leg's gone, my leg's gone. And it's like, it's really gone. But they told me, you have to stay strong. You have to keep your head up because this happens for a reason, that God has a plan for you. And I kept those words in my head. The recovery process wasn't that hard because they got me out of bed the next day. I had to walk on walkers, but I really just wanted my morphine because I was in so much pain. And then after a while, I was in the hospital for 5 days as usual. The doctor came in and looked at my leg, and right now I still have like mostly all my leg. They just cut it above the knee. And you know, from that process, all the tumors have stopped. It's been 2 years and nothing has grown. And I thank God for that. You know, I still have my life. I'm thankful for that. And if it wasn't for my family, my friends, I don't think I could ever went through with that. You know, I would have been gave up, but I haven't gave up. I'm still here, and I thank God. And all I can tell you is, for anyone that's lost their leg, or any child or any teenager that's lost their leg, I promise you, you can still do anything you want to do if you just put your mind to it.